Welcome to the broadcast, everybody. It's the very first broadcast of the month, so in that spirit, it's time for me to remind you to hit subscribe. If you mean to subscribe and have found yourself unsubscribed by accident, please hit subscribe, give the notification bell a tinkle, and if you've been enjoying the show and wish to treat me to a black Americano, my tip jar is in the box. It is the most gorgeous day here in the kingdom. It's really chilly, but really sunny, which is really how I like it on a winter's day. I told you I was worried that January and February were going to be so bleak and depressing, as they can be, but I gotta tell you, so far, some beautiful rays of sunshine coming through. It's just been glorious, so nice for walking and talking, really gorgeous. And actually, I'll showcase some of it for you later in the broadcast, because the Queen was out and about in Bath and she was able to bask in some of that weather. Well, perhaps bask is a bit over the top. It's certainly not what you call warm, but unseasonably mild, I would say. But of course, there's always a cloud, there's always a thunderstorm. We look for the silver linings here in the fruit basket, don't we? My dear fruit basketeers. But there's always a storm around the corner. And there's always a wicked witch riding their broomstick. "Surrender, Catherine," it says over the hospital. No, Katie will not be surrendering, my dear, and nor will the king. Harry, that hobgoblin Harry. Yes, she puts me in mind of the Wicked Witch of the West. They have the same complexion. Maybe that's what the late Queen was so worried about. Or whoever it was, Charles and Catherine, that were complaining about, "Ooh, what will the skin colour be?" They were worried it was going to be green like the Wicked Witch of the West. And that she might inherit the same legs. And then at the Wicked Witch of the West's side, we have one of those monkeys, one of those flying hobgoblin monkey affairs. That's Harold, isn't it? The henchman. The henchman, waiting for release until she is melted and her beautiful wickedness is destroyed. But I better watch what I say, hadn't I, my dears, or I'm going to be in trouble with a slapped wrist from the Aspen Institute and all kinds of people who might not understand a little bit of dramatic queenly humour and take things a bit too seriously. You say you called her a witch and you wanted her destroyed. Well, we're going to take down your platform. We're going to put you into seclusion. We're not going to give you any opportunity to say what you want to say. That is what they're up to behind the scenes, isn't it, my dear, as we will speak about in a moment. But first of all, we have this revelation from Netflix. The chief content officer, Bella Bajaria, was speaking at a conference about what is forthcoming on the platform on Netflix, and she revealed that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex actually have a bunch in development. A bunch. A bunch of what? Bananas? With "I love you" and "you're worth it" written all over them. A bunch in development under Archewell Productions. Oh, goody goody gumdrops. Save me when my bum pops. Well, as I told you very recently, in fact, in the last broadcast, I think, that would never be profitable. And you know it, and I know it. We all know that that would never be profitable for Netflix if they were to simply churn out their virtue signalling worthiness and all that dribble and drivel. So as well as a film and television series, we are told, and likelihood is that the film will be Meet Me at Ricky Lake, and who knows what this series is going to be, but as well as them, which are in very early development, she tells us. This is what Bella Bajaria tells us. They are in very early development. Now, remember, that's what Pearl was in. Very early development and discussion. That's what the next crop of stuff that never materialised on Spotify was after the debacle of Archetypes. Very early development. So read that as being most probably won't come to fruition, half of them. Be dropped like pearl, could easily be dropped like those pearls all over the floor. And then she says, then she hits us with it. Yes, my dear, now she hits us with it. They are also working on a couple of unscripted things. A couple of unscripted... This is where the money is, my dear. What have I been telling you? This is where the dollars are. They don't care about Meet Me at Ricky Lake. They don't care about Pearl. They don't care about all those tawdriness. They don't care about all the worthy shit. They want the drama and they want the gossip. So here we are, roll the drums, at home with the Harkles. Here we come. Here we come. They put all their irons in the fire, haven't they, my dear, like any old horse awaiting their horseshoe. Irons in the fire. And I got to tell you, when it comes to Netflix, I do have a subscription to Netflix. I wait for some of the true crime to come on. I like those series that are rather like true crime and suspense, but not dramatized. I don't like it when they overproduce and over-dramatize it, when they let the people speak for themselves and there's twist after twist. I've watched a few lately which I rather enjoyed, but they come up too rarely for me, and there's not much at all on Netflix, to be honest with you, that I watch. I don't like to get involved with series. The one thing I adore, which I told you before, is Virgin River. Named after me, of course, my dear. That's why I'm so pure for you today in my pearls and floral print. Oh, with a cup of tea at my side and a mint julep, because I'm so pure. Virgin River. I love Virgin River. Nothing ever really happens on it. It's comfort food for the eyes and the senses. That's what it is to me. So I spent all year waiting for the next series. I'm looking forward to the next one. I love it. I've got a Virgin River mug that I sit out of. Oh yes, I'm quite invested, my dear. And by the way, no, Virgin River is not about my experience losing my virginity to an Eskimo at Bungalow in Santa Monica on the Wiltshire Boulevard. No, it is not about that experience, although I've shared it with you before, and although it would be more entertaining than certainly anything the Harkles would put out, that's for sure. But no, that is between me and the Eskimo in question, or the young Inuit gentleman. I'm using his word. He described himself as an Eskimo before anyone starts scolding me on what's appropriate. I called him what he wanted to be called, and, you know, I gave him my flowers, so that's the way it's gonna be. And I will say, by the way, that Bungalow place is dreadful now, absolutely dreadful now. When I was there in the ladies' loos with the Eskimo, it was in its early days of success, and well, we just dropped in because we happened to be in the area. It was unplanned, but it had a lovely cosy vibe to it. I've got to say, a lovely cosy vibe, and a little bit chic, not over the top. You know, I was staying at the chateau, so I was used to something a little bit more salubrious, but it was fine to pop in there and, you know, have a shag and a drink. But it's gone downhill, hideously downhill, and now it's rather tacky and tawdry, so, you know, I wouldn't recommend it. But what could unscripted mean? This is the question that we all have to ask, isn't it, my dear? What does unscripted mean? Well, it certainly doesn't mean without a script, does it? Because this is the Harkles. They can't do anything without a script unless it is an Oprah Winfrey. It's sort of affair, and when they do that, they can't stop whinging. Whinge, 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 whinge. The whinge and the minge. Do you understand? That's what it means to them. But I certainly feel that a reality show of sorts is exactly where they are headed, and what we will be served up, my dear. Yes, from the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, Prince, and her occupation as Princess of the United Kingdom, whether we like it or not, her former occupation. Reality TV. This is what they're about to serve up to us, my dear. Oh joy. And then, because in their official capacity as the King and Queen of Montecito, they released a video urging social media companies to reduce the amount of harmful content that children see online, and this featured their appearance from back in October, you might recall, for World Mental Health Day. They rehashed some of that with a brand new statement, which is all very worthy, by the way. I mean, who could object to that? And the premise behind it, initially. Who could object to that? This is the thing, isn't it? They use the smokescreen of something that is rather worthy and is rather good. And then, in my opinion, they sully that with using it for more sinister motives. Not just financial, but also sinister motives that they feel might be beneficial to them, in my personal opinion. I've no problem with the sentiments of all this about keeping harmful content from children. I mean, who would? But their statement ends with the quote, "This is not time to pass the buck of responsibility." Oh, they've got a nerve. They've got a bloody nerve. Because they've taken no responsibility. Zero. Goose egg. Zero responsibility for their behaviour over the past few years. Not one word of regret or apology or acceptance that they behaved ingraciously, that they were reactive and downright cruel to the memory of the late Elizabeth and the late Duke, in fact, and all the royals. Not an iota of shame. Shameless individuals they are. They've got to know, how are they being responsible when they are hiring and commissioning the most hateful trolls? And you know the ones I'm talking about, the trolls and race baiters that appear on social media and Twitter. Race baiters and trolls of the very worst kind. They employ them and then they showcase them on their documentaries, as they did on Harry and Meghan. They showcase them, including certain trolls of Twitter that have disparaged Catherine and William openly slagging them off for looking haggard and old and saying all kinds of disparaging things about them. Where was their due diligence and responsibility? And why were they giving their tacit approval to these type of characters? That's what I want to know. That's what I want to know. It's a disgrace. They have also been actively funding individuals and condoning squads, various squads online, for their vulgar and tawdry cabaret. They collaborated, albeit covertly, with Mr. Omid Scobie. And his tome, which was not necessarily the most flattering, royal compendium, was it, my dear? And they talk about grief throughout this statement as well, and how grief impacts people. They didn't have a second thought for the grief of the late Queen Elizabeth II while she was mourning her beloved husband. They didn't have a moment's thought about it. It didn't stop them going ahead, writing that poison-penned tome with the intent to release it while she still lived and breathed. What does grief mean to them when it comes to his own granny? You know, it's all very nice and good bothering around these families in America that have been hurt and grief-stricken. And I've no doubt that they all sing the praises of the Harkles, but surely that sort of charitable instinct must start at home with the people that love you. Some say it's a form of gaslighting. It's no good telling us, as they do in their statement, that everyone is affected by the online world and social media. There's an entry point that's positive and creative community, but we all just want to feel safe. Well, start by looking in the mirror. Start by looking in the mirror, and you'll see that you put royal security through its paces in a time when the royal family are very vulnerable. You amped up any sort of dangers facing them and security threats. You put them through their paces and your own family by revealing Harry's precise head count. And it's just utterly careless and downright stupid, to be honest. And then you complain that no one wants to fund your security. Maybe stop dipping your toes in toxic oceans. Queen Camilla has been celebrating the 850th anniversary of one of Britain's oldest charities, St John Foundation, by meeting almshouse residents and attending a celebration service at Bath Abbey. Such a beautiful place. I remember telling you about my visit there last summer. And she was greeted by 900 school children who cheered and shouted for the Queen as she arrived outside the Abbey. It really is something lovely to watch, actually. And as I mentioned, the weather was just perfect and gorgeous, with that mellowy sort of sun over the chill air. Beautiful clemency to herald the beginning of the new month. The Queen wore a coat by Max Mara, the Manuela, in ultramarine. And the clutch was by Lorna, just like the late Queen Elizabeth used to wear. It is the London Tosca clutch. And it did cross my mind for a moment that it might have been one that belonged to the late Queen, but then I remembered we covered in a broadcast from a year or two ago Camilla visiting the home of Lorna and looking at their production facilities and promoting their trade at the same time. Of course, Lorna holds a royal warrant, so I'm sure she has many versions of the bag in stock, but it was very nice to see her toting one. And she wore Russell and Bromley dressage boots to the toes and a commemorative pin for the 850th anniversary of the St John Foundation. Her Majesty also officially opened Maggie's Royal Free, a new cancer support centre at the Royal Free Hospital in London. And here she wore a dress by Anna Valentine, an Apollo blue topaz pendant in yellow gold, a vintage Alhambra yellow gold agate bracelet by Van Cleef & Arpels, a gold disc pendant with her ruby birthstone engraved with her grandchildren's initials, plus a new antique enamel and diamond set brooch by Wartsky Limited. Isn't it gorgeous? I wonder if it was a gift from hubby. It was fun to see Davina McCall receive her MBE for services to broadcasting. Davina McCall is a very famous television presenter here in the kingdom. She came to her greatest fame as the original presenter of Big Brother. And this was during an investiture ceremony conducted by the Princess Royal on behalf of the King at Buckingham Palace. Miss McCall was watched by her family. How very emotional. And it turns out that Davina is a huge fan of royalty. And she said, "The Princess Royal has always been one of my favourite royals because I think as a young woman or as a young gal growing up and seeing her, she always seemed to be quite gung-ho, and it felt like she rather shared my ethos in life. She is a very positive, no-nonsense woman, and I really like her for that, so I was thrilled when it was her, a real treat." And Davina said that Anne was lovely, very personable, and she did quite a lot of crying before and after. And she's also said that she's been busy this year filming the new series of Long Lost Family. That is another rare series that I really enjoy when it comes up every year. Long Lost Family, with all the reunions of adopted children and long lost mothers and this kind of thing. I love it. I watched every episode ever of England and the Australian version, and I think an American version as well that I can get my hands on. It is like a therapy to me. I cry buckets in every single episode. I've gone through many handkerchiefs watching that. It's one of my great joys, actually, sitting down, watching it and blubbing. So I'll be looking forward to that. Davina revealed that she has been writing to the royal family all her life, or at least since the age of about 8 years old, when she wrote to the Queen, like many of you did, my dears, and she received a reply with the famous red wax seal on the back of the envelope. And she also wrote to Princess Margaret and to Diana after the Panorama interview, so she kept writing to them into adulthood. She also wrote to Prince Charles as he was during his Climategate scandal, if you will, when everybody was ridiculing him. I presume she wrote to encourage him. And she also wrote to William and to Kate. And she said, "When I got my MBE, I got a letter from Prince William saying, 'I just want to say congratulations. We are so pleased for you. It meant a lot to me.'" And other notable mentions include Nick Knight, the fashion photographer, who I've met and worked with, by the way, and I've also met Roxander, the designer, who becomes an MBE. Nick Knight becomes CBE. As I say, Davina McCall got her big break on Big Brother after God's Gift and a few other appearances with Kylie Minogue as an extra in her music videos. But she got her big break in Big Brother. And who do you think has been lined up for Celebrity Big Brother after an absence of 6 years here in the kingdom? Gary Goldsmith. Yes, who, I hear you cry? Catherine's uncle, Gary Goldsmith. That character, the successful businessman who can't stop talking about the Harkles. And we're rather pleased about it, aren't we, my dear? Because he is not a fan of them. And he makes it clear what a splendid niece young Kate is for him. He loves her. He loves the Middletons, of course, his sister Carol, He loves them, adores them, and he will not stand for any of this mischief regarding the Harkles. So let's keep our fingers crossed, my dear, that he will indeed be appearing on Celebrity Big Brother. Not that I think it's especially royal behaviour, you understand, but you know, if the likes of the Tyndalls can go on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, then some largely unseen relative of Catherine's going on Celebrity BB, who am I to complain? But let's hope that the goldsmith provides us with gold nuggets encrusted with a few gems. One of the late Queen's vehicles has come up for sale, one of her very large fleet, and this time it's a Range Rover that was previously owned by the late Queen round about 2016, 2017. It's up for sale for $225,000. It's an SUV and it was driven rather sparingly. It's only done 2,500 miles over 2 years, and then it was sold into the Land Rover network. And this particular vehicle carried the Queen together with President Obama during his state visit, that time when Prince Philip drove them. Yeah, that's the one. And it's something really rather admirable, isn't it? That personal touch when we receive other heads of state, presidents, prime ministers here in the kingdom. It is lovely the way that the late Queen, and I'm sure that the King will be doing now under her tutelage, but the way that she would give that little personal touch, and the Duke would personally drive them about instead of relying on chauffeurs and drivers. You know, they were quite happy for Philip to do it well into his 90s, to drive them about all over. It's very charming. It's very charming to these world leaders, you see, who have everything done and their batties wiped for them and every want and whim catered to. It's rather charming for them to be served in that way. It's rather charming for them, as we were told by Jill Biden recently, rather charming when the president offered to help and Her Majesty poured the tea for them and they were having tea, and Her late Majesty said, absolutely not, I want to serve you, I'll be serving you, because that is what it's all about. It's a reminder that when the late Elizabeth signed off, she would sign off, your servant Elizabeth, they are there to serve, even if that means serving a cup of tea, my dear. That is what is instilled into them and what goes over a lot of people's heads. So very charming there. The modifications to the vehicle included side steps and a police siren originally, but they've since been removed, though the set of grab handles that were requested by the late Queen remain. The Range Rover is a metallic blue with an interior of cream leather. It was announced today that the Princess Royal has inherited 2 of the late Queen's ladies-in-waiting, who are going to be joining Anne's own office. And if you remember, the Princess Royal retains 11 ladies-in-waiting at any one time. And do also remember that she uses them to help navigate her way through the engagements that she holds throughout the year. Last year, she attended 427 engagements, so you can understand why she retains 11 of them. But 2 of the ladies in waiting that she has inherited from the late Queen are Lady Elizabeth Leeming and Mrs. Susan Rhodes. Congratulations both. These are 2 of the 5 women who formed an inner circle around the late Queen during her final years, and they remained on duty until the funeral. The others being Lady Susan Hussey, as we know so well, and I saw a lovely photograph of her with Anne in their younger years recently, so I'll throw it up, but isn't it charming? And also there was Dame Mary Morrison and Dame Annabel Whitehead, and these ladies-in-waiting were absorbed into the new royal household and re-termed ladies of the household. And the new Queen is calling her assistants, if you will, the companions, isn't she? The Queen's companions. It's all stupid. It's all stupid as far as I'm concerned. They should still be known as ladies-in-waiting. It may not be politically correct, and it might be old-fashioned, and it might imply servitude in a certain way with all this waiting business. But, as I said a moment ago, when I made the point, the late Queen used to sign off, your servant Elizabeth. We're all servants in one way or the other, aren't we, my dear? And it is considered a duty and an honour to serve. And regardless, ladies-in-waiting is charming. It has a lot more charm, and it also reminds me of a row of pretty flowers. Pretty maids all in a row, if you will. Look at the ladies in waiting. Aren't they delicious? In bloom on this spring day. You see, my dear, it's whimsical. And it's a real shame that it's been done away with. And I will, as I told you, be lobbying when Queen Catherine becomes consort. I will be lobbying in advance of that tenureship to try and reinstate ladies in waiting. And perhaps we can do a petition. Mrs. Susan Rhodes, who joins Anne's team, is the daughter-in-law of Margaret Rhodes, who was the late Queen's close friend and cousin. And completing the new appointments are Lady McFarlane and Mrs. John Armstrong. A new private secretary for Her Royal Highness has also been appointed, a military man. Colonel John Boyd likes everything shipshape, just as Anne does. He was 32 years in the army, and he replaces Charles Davies, who has supported since 2019. Anne's ladies-in-waiting do not provide companionship or care in the same way that the late Queen's might have done. In fact, they are intentionally selected from all over the kingdom, dividing Anne's schedule of engagements into regions, you see, so that they are there and ready to accompany her when required, determined by their location. It's a very practical arrangement. The Duchess of Edinburgh joined a volunteer team at the Lighthouse, and the Lighthouse hosts a gorgeous weekly tea and cake session for the senior citizens, who are all very surprised to be greeted and served by Her Royal Highness. How lovely that must have been to see Sophie arriving without fanfare. In fact, Anna Wright, the centre manager, said the Duchess made everyone feel so special, showing interest and care to our guests and rolling up her sleeves with the volunteers. I love the roll neck that Sophie's wearing, isn't it gorgeous? So plush. Do love a nice bit of plush luxury knitwear. Ooh, ooh la la. The Duke of Edinburgh is back on British soil now, and he's going to be busy with some private engagements this week. But last week he did continue on his tour of St. Helena and its surrounds, and had a marvellous time by the look of it. I'm not going to go into detail over everything he did, but he was spotting sharks on a marine tour. He planted a tree at the Millennium Forest, all this kind of thing. And he unveiled a plaque to mark the official opening of the airport, the first airport at St. Helena, actually. But the reason that I'm flashing up these photos really isn't to show you what to do. It's to make a little point. And that is the fact that it was quite a revelation to see him in his shirt and trousers, more casual. It looks better. And it's a point that I've tried to make over the last year or so. As he's lost weight, it's fluctuated a bit, but he has lost some weight to him. And I think it looks much better when you see clothes that are slim cut on a slim person. Do you know what I mean? I'm on the slim side, and I know that it's not flattering to wear clothes or trousers or tops that are going to flap all over the place and in the wind, my dear. With the understanding that Prince Edward isn't going to probably rock up in skinny jeans as I might do. But you get my drift, my dear, a little bit more favourably cut. He has the Savile Row at his fingertips. And yes, I'm sure it goes to wear great big suits for the gentlemen of aristocracy who are trying to hide various sins of the pudding bowl. Should we put it that way, my dear? You can hide a lot of sins with a well-tailored jacket that covers everything. But Prince Edward doesn't need to do that. He actually looks very more fit and more young when he isn't swamped by huge, great big jackets that look as if he's, Edward in Wonderland, and he swallowed something and shrank, but, still has this great big massive coat. Does it really take that much updating? And I've said it before, and I will say it again. Sophie, get onto it, because he's still a fine-looking gentleman, he really is. But it's got to be showcased in the right way. I understand he's not a model, but he is a royal, and there's no reason why he can't up his game a little bit and look a bit more slick and more sharp. I think it would behoove him. I really do. The Princess Royal also joined in for celebrations for Jodrell Bank Observatory's new UNESCO status. She planted a pip, which was taken to the International Space Station by Tim Peake and originated in the garden that inspired Sir Isaac Newton's theory of gravity. And while she was in Cheshire, she also opened Riding for the Disabled's new facilities at Reese Heath Equestrian College. And you can see that she was in clover. Anytime she's around horses, she is enthralled. enthralled. And the charity provides over 17,000 disabled people with fun activities like riding and carriage driving, beloved of our dear Lady Lou and the late Duke. So even with the absence of the King and the Princess of Wales, the rest of the royal family are spiriting along, doing their royal duty and keeping things ticking over just fine, aren't they? They're doing just fine, and I certainly appreciate them for doing it and for sprinkling their own blend of magic, because that is what I see. Magic in the air whenever they're around, whatever engagement they attend, joy in the children's faces, and it gives hope, and hope is so very needed and often underestimated. And it's remembered for a lifelong, isn't it, my dear? Remembered by all these people, all generations, be it the little kids greeting the Queen at Bath Abbey, or the old fruits sharing some tea and cake with our Sophie, isn't it? Wonderful, magical stuff. Thank you for joining me, my dears, and I will see you in the next broadcast. Take care and toodle pip.